Alright, it's Barry, and today I've got a load of great, easy to grow seeds that I'm going to be starting off in May. Hopefully we're getting towards the end of the colder part of spring now, and that means that it's time to get on with growing those seeds that like a bit of a warmer temperature for growing. It's been a funny one this year so far, probably one of the worst starts to the growing season for as long as I can remember as far as the weather conditions go here in the UK, but we're coming out of it now I think, so we're just going to have to see how things go on. It's the end of April 2021 today, and if you're watching this video in the future, once we've all burnt to dust through global warming, it's been the coldest, driest and the most frosty April since records began in the 1970s, with less than 10% of the average rainfall that we'd normally have in April. So if you've been sowing your seeds and you're wondering why they're either took a lot longer than expected or they haven't germinated at all, don't worry, you're not alone. I've got seeds in my greenhouse that only started germinating now that I started off in March, so it's not really been a good year for starting seeds off without artificial heat sources, and luckily I've also started a ton off at home in the porch and on the heat mats, so I've got enough plants already on the go to do until my late sowings come through. There's loads of varieties to start this month, and just because of the weather that we've had so far this year, still be careful with temperatures and keep an eye on the weather just in case we do have any more cold surprises, so that you can protect any seedlings that you do have growing. And as always, I'll make sure that you can check out all of these seeds in the description just in case you fancy growing some of these for yourself. First up, we've got kale, and kale's a crop that's increasing in popularity due to its nutritional content, and it's also a really attractive plant when it's grown in your garden or your allotment. Kale tolerates cold weather better than most other brassicas too, so you can keep it growing for longer after the end of the growing season, and it can also tolerate living in a bit of shade as well. It's really important to keep kale netted just to protect it from birds, as they're especially fond of the leaves and they'll definitely eat them all if they do find your plants. I'm going to have to build a cage or a netted thing to stop them getting to mine, because there's loads and loads of birds here, and I'll definitely have off with all of mine if they find them. Sow your kale seeds thinly 1 centimetre deep in a seed bed with rows around 15 centimetres apart, and you can do that between now and June, and once your seedlings grow, thin them out to around 7 centimetres apart. You can transplant your young plants to the final growing position when the plants have around 5 or 6 true leaves, and it's best to bury the plant just up to under its first set of leaves. There's loads of really great varieties of kale, and the most common ones are green curly varieties, but there's also black and purple kale varieties as well for a bit of a mix. Next up is one of my absolute favourite plants to grow, which is pumpkins, and these are the best when they're grown from seeds indoors, but don't worry if you don't have an indoor growing space, you can always sow them later outdoors in a nice sheltered place. I'm going to be starting my pumpkin seeds off right now, so let's get over to the table and get those in. To start your pumpkins off indoors, sow your seeds in medium-sized pots throughout May, so just like these ones, but if it's warm, get them in as early as possible just to give them a bit more growing time, ready for summer. Pumpkin seeds are long and flat, and you want to sow them on the sides 1 centimetre deep and keep them warm at around 20 degrees C. I grew Atlantic Giant and Jack Ruby Little varieties last year, so this year I'm going to be trying some different ones. I've got some Big Macs, Jack-o'-lantern, and for an unusual one I've got Casper, which will hopefully be white instead of orange. My preference with larger, faster growing plants like pumpkins is to sow them straight into individual pots with a single seed in each one, just to minimise disturbance to the roots as they start to grow. These seeds will blast out massive root systems in no time at all, so I'd really rather not damage them by separating the seedlings for repotting or by thinning them out in general. And that's those done. As I mentioned earlier, just keep them warm now and they'll be germinating in around a week. If you want to grow your own pumpkins this year, I'll leave a link in the description to my full guide from last year where I set up the pumpkin patch and I planted the bigger pumpkin plants into the ground. That's all underneath my polytunnel now, so I'm going to have to make a new one this year somewhere else. I also saved that pigeon from drowning in someone's water butt as well on that video, so it's a good one, so don't forget to check it out. You can still start off your tomatoes at the start of this month to try and get some plants ready for summer if you haven't started them off already. As I said earlier, it's been so cold that without forcing germination with heaters and heat mats, it's only been around the last week or two that I've seen any germination on the ones in the greenhouse that I've just left to grow naturally. So even by starting them now, you won't be massively far behind, but even then, you still got a bit of a shorter season with them, but there's still plenty of time for them to grow loads and loads of tomatoes. Check the seed variety before you buy them just to make sure that you grow the right type of tomato plant to suit your growing space, and tomatoes generally have two different ways of growing. There's cordon, which are also known as indeterminate tomatoes, which grow tall plants reaching up to 1.8 metres tall, and they require support or they'll just fall over. Alternatively, there's bush varieties, which are also called determinate tomatoes, which are shorter and bushy and they don't require staking. I've got absolutely tons of tomato related videos, like my top 5 favourite tomatoes to grow. I've got a guide on growing them from seeds, which will be handy if you're just starting them off now, and I've also grown some plants from sliced tomatoes, which are doing great as well. In the next couple of weeks, I'll be starting my big tomato experiment for this year as well, where I'll be testing a ton of different types of plant foods on tomato plants to see which ones are the best for growing loads and loads of tomatoes. Last year, the Miracle Grow All Purpose was the champion, so let's see if we can fend off the competition this year. Keep an eye out for that one, and I can't wait to get started on it. Next up is my second favourite flowers to grow, which are nasturtiums, and nasturtiums can be sown straight into the ground wherever you want them to flower. All you need to do is make sure that the area is free of any weeds, rake your soil and make some 2cm deep drills, and if you're using rows, you'll want to make them around 30cm apart. Just sprinkle your seeds in carefully and cover them over with a bit of soil. And I've got some different packs of nasturtiums this year that I've just mixed together. There's Purple Emperor, Empress of India, and a couple of other ones as well. And I'm hoping that they'll produce a mix of orange, yellow and purple flowers in the summer. The contrasting colours should look really nice. Plus, they're really great for covering fences and trellising because they'll climb all over everything, but they can be quite invasive if you're not careful, so watch out for that. Next up is my actual favourite flowers to grow, and that's slightly more than nasturtiums, and that's sunflowers. Although most sunflower varieties have yellow flowers, sunflowers can also have crimson red, orange, white or green, with loads of different combinations in between. Annual sunflowers bloom from summer into autumn, and depending on the variety, they can take 11 to 18 weeks to flower from your seed sowing. So it's a really good idea to do sowings every couple of weeks to keep a constant supply of flowers going right through to late summer. Sunflowers are really easy to grow from seed, and they can grow to heights of up to 2 metres tall. And to grow sunflowers, you're going to need a sunny, sheltered spot and some really good soil. And protect the young plants from slugs and snails, and just water your sunflowers frequently. And you can also give them a weekly feed as well. As they grow taller, you'll probably need to stake them or fix them to nearby support to stop them falling over in the wind. Have a good look at the available varieties, as some will grow like 50cm, whereas others will grow over 3 metres tall, so make sure you have enough room for them. And this year I'm going to be growing Red Sun, Claret F1, Russian Giant and Villa Rice varieties, and I actually did a handy guide showing you how I like to sow my sunflowers last week, and all of them are doing great in the greenhouse. If you watched that video already, here's the Russian Giant that I sowed towards the end of the video, and look how much bigger this is only after 1 week. It's absolutely massive. And this is one of the Red Sun seedlings. All of these have germinated in the same morning, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how these turn out later on in the year. There's also still time to get some melon plants on the go if you get them in during the first week of May. There's loads of different types, with some varieties growing better in different climates. Melons are sensitive plants, so they do need a warm, humid and sunny place to grow. In the UK, it's best to grow melons in a glasshouse or a polytunnel, which is exactly what I'm planning on doing this year. I'll be growing mine in the polytunnel once they're big enough. Sow your melon seeds 1.5cm deep in a propagator or a covered pot, and keep them at around 18 to 21 degrees C, which is 64 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If they're going to be grown outside, harden off your plants from late May into early June once there's no danger of frost and they've got 3 or 4 proper leaves. I've got watermelon and Hale's jumbo melon growing this year, and I'm really looking forward to growing these and seeing if we can get some really decent harvests from them. They're a couple of weeks old now and they're doing great so far. A really easy one to grow this month is cucumbers, and cucumbers are especially good to grow if you've got a greenhouse or a polytunnel or even a conservatory, because they love the higher temperatures. If you're in a warmer climate, you can just grow them outside later in the year after starting them off indoors as well. I'm going to start off with a tray of cucumber plants today, so I'll show you how to do that right now. Here we are. You can start your cucumber seeds off in a multi-cell propagator just like this one, and it's as simple as filling this with a bit of compost, and once that's filled up, you can just stick your seeds in each cell on the side like this. And just cover each seed with a bit of your compost, and once you've done, give them a bit of a water and keep them somewhere warm and sunny just until they germinate in around a week's time. After about another week or so, your seedlings will be large enough to handle, and you can transfer them just into pots like these ones, or even just transfer them directly into a grow bag in the greenhouse. Make sure you give them some support as they start to grow, as they are a vine-based fruit that does need help staying stood up, and then in around 12 weeks time you'll have fantastic cucumber vines and hopefully some flowers ready to grow fruit. Well, that's it for today, and hopefully you've got some ideas there for some really great plants to start growing this month. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to make sure that you don't miss out on any of my great new videos that I've got coming up in the next couple of weeks, like my plant food experiment that I mentioned earlier, and I'll also have loads and loads of updates on the plants that I'm growing and tons of other great guides as well. And if you're planning on growing any of the seed varieties that I've mentioned today for yourself, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.